Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman, live on your radio. There's a talk show host who, in my opinion, gave a great commentary, if you will. Something that we really need to consider. And I thought it was worthy of highlighting. The headline is "The Real Reason the Pro-Life Movement is Hitting a Ceiling." And it's a very important article written over at The Blaze. Got to give The Blaze credit for this. Auron McIntyre is the one that argued this and basically said that, hey, President Trump's pro-life victories and new laws cannot solve the problem of the abortion or pro-death agenda. Why? Because it has become interwoven into every aspect of our lives. It's a great article because I think it highlights the truth. It defends President Donald Trump on pro-life, justly so. It mentioned that, you know what, Roe versus Wade made abortion foundational to America's economy, workforce, and entire way of life. The pro-life movement has seen a number of significant victories under Donald Trump, and good on Trump for it. Okay, in the last 6 years, for example, Trump has stopped U.S. tax dollars from funding groups that perform abortion to the best of his ability. He's done so overseas, which he has a lot more control of than he does domestically, by the way. He's appointed 3 Supreme Court justices who helped overturn Roe versus Wade. President Trump has eliminated some federal funding to Planned Parenthood through the Title 10 or Title X rule changes. He's protected doctors and nurses who didn't want to participate in abortions or murder. All right. He's done his best to stop government use of fetal tissue for research. He's pardoned several pro-life activists who have been arrested for protesting murder. Despite these incredible wins by President Trump, pro-lifers seem to be frustrated with President Trump, and they say his stance on abortion. They criticize him for dealing with the issue as a state concern instead of pushing for strong national ban with federal limits. They also feel like Trump hasn't done enough to stop widespread mail-order abortion pills, and they condemn his call for flexibility on policies. Now, Blaze TV host McIntyre, or Auron, A-U-R-O-N, is that how you say it, Auron McIntyre? He's fully on board with the pro-life movement, and he believes the abortion, murder of a child in no certain terms is acceptable. It's one of the most horrific things about our society, he argues, and he's right on, by the way. He says the problem is many activists fail to see the reality of what the movement is literally up against. And I think this is where his article shines. He's right as rain. President Trump has done tremendous in this and doesn't deserve the blame. Anyway, so there's an episode of the Auron McIntyre show where the host argues no amount of laws or, quote, Trump bans can fix the problem. Why? Because the problem is really permeating in every aspect of our society. The economy, the workforce, the culture. It's built on, quote, easy access to murder, to abortion. Okay? And so you got to understand, he goes into the details about the workforce, right? There's a great video you can go look up on YouTube about this that he does. Okay? And the idea is every aspect of our society is based on this abortion, right? Okay? I support President Trump 100%, and he hasn't gone far enough. I agree with that. But the question becomes, what can President Trump do alone? He can't do it all by himself. Okay? President Trump is wise to take a nuanced approach to such a deeply polarizing issue. Donald Trump knew that it was going to be unpopular, and he refused to make it the key to the election. That makes political sense, this commentator admits, and I understand but disagree. Somebody's got to stand up somewhere. But now that Trump is president, he is treating the abortion issue exactly as he promised. But many pro-lifers are nonetheless incensed with Trump. Okay, we want to ban the abortion pill. But hey, Trump's got a lot of issues going on. Do we need more unpopular things on his plate? Okay, we support the pro-life movement 100%. But the core issue is the state referendums. If the pro-life movement was winning at the state level after the overturn of Roe versus Wade, then it would need Trump to champion everything and be the man to take it or take the fall of it. Okay? It's the Lord's work. It's a truly justified crusade, McIntyre says. But if you're losing consistently on a state level, something else has to be done. What's happened is the abortion has become foundational in America since Roe versus Wade. Okay? It's at the center of everything. We've made child sacrifice the center of our civilization, he explains bluntly. It fuels the 1960s sexual revolution, which coincided, by the way, with the birth control pill and the realization of abortion. It turned sex from a, quote, sacred among those who believed in God to a risky behavior with consequences. But now with murder and birth control, it's now consequence-free, they claim. Now, I don't agree with that. And he's not saying that it's consequence-free. He's saying that we pretend it's consequence-free with our, quote, human or man-made things, right? You change the relationship between men and women, they can have hookups with no consequences. Okay, women are basically willing to be involved there. Don't worry if she gets pregnant because she can avoid the consequences. De-incentivizing marriage and family. Women then entering the workforce en masse. Women in the workforce has all kinds of benefits for employers. Corporations love working women. It basically doubles the workforce, doubles the labor pool. Now you can get people to work for cheaper because it's all based on supply and demand, right? Women also became, quote, huge money savers for businesses because not only could businesses pay women less, they could also pay men lower wages because the pressure to pay salaries that could provide for entire families suddenly was off the table. Instead of getting one man doing the job that raised a family, now you got a man and his wife both working for the same amount that just the man used to work for. This shift also culminated in a need for more government. Yeah, before women entered the workforce, Americans didn't need a massive government because women are at home. They were building associations, connections, social credit. You didn't have to have people step in and do all the things that women used to do. It also upped the nation's GDP because women who were normally at home prospering the family are now, quote, prospering the market, prospering the economy, prospering, right? When you move all of the female jobs, all the female roles, all the social capital that females were creating outside of the, quote, economic zone, and you, quote, move it into the economic zone, GDP goes up, right? Economic activity goes up because now you got all these services that are necessary that women used to do, now they don't do, they don't have time to do, including, going out to eat, nannies, the list goes on and on. Abortion thus became a, quote, guarantee. Yeah. That the benefits would work out for women who were locked into the workforce. Okay, but the depth, the altar of abortion that Americans now kneel at is even greater than that. Anyway, there's a whole episode on this from McIntyre. Great, great commentary. And I say it goes deeper than that because you talk about God's laws. And what they've done is they basically betrayed women. How do they betray women? They basically kind of make you believe that a woman is beneath her station if she somehow chooses to be a mother. Okay, we know the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, folks. We know God's laws. But we've been talked out of God's laws, and we basically sacrifice babies, and we teach women that the only way you can be somebody is if you turn yourself into a woman that gives sex free, a woman that kills her young, a woman that goes out in the workforce and makes a name for herself. That's the only way to be a real woman. And so we've created this absolute satanic lie, and we've fallen for it. So anyway, I think Trump deserves a lot of credit on the pro-life movement, and I think we, the people, need to stand up a lot more bold than we have. And if we would, we could change the game, but Trump can't change it by himself. I'm Sam Bushman. Hang on, Liberty Roundtable Live.
Are you watching what's happening in our country and asking, what can I do? Join the John Birch Society in Salt Lake City, June 6th, for a powerful one-day conference. The day includes a host of respected speakers, 2 meals, and meaningful connections. You'll gain clarity on the issues and walk away with practical steps you can take to your community. Reserve your seat today at jbs.org/SLC26. That's jbs.org/SLC26.
You know where the solution can be found, Mr. President? In churches, in wedding chapels, in maternity wards across the country and around the world. More babies will mean forward-looking adults, the sort we need to tackle long-term, large-scale problems. American babies in particular are likely going to be wealthier, better educated, and more conservation-minded than children raised in still industrializing countries. As economist Tyler Cowen recently wrote, quote, "By having more children, you're making your nation more populous, thus boosting its capacity to solve climate change. The planet does not need for us to think globally and act locally so much as it needs us to think family and act personally. The solution to so many of our problems, at all times and in all places, is to fall in love, get married, and have some kids."
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk about this issue. There's so many different news tidbits. In the last tidbit of the show, I want to get to a bunch of them. Hormel launches what they call Spam hot dogs. Yeah, they say it's for summer rollout. It's going to be at stadiums and convenience stores. So if you want to try one of these Spam dogs, roll to 7-Eleven or somewhere and you can get one. Roll to a stadium. Hormel Foods confirmed the, quote, new Spam dog will be debuted this summer with initial availability at select convenience stores and ballparks. Anyway, I guess some Hawaii 7-Eleven locations are going to be kind of kicking this off. That makes sense since Hawaii is the Spam capital of the world. Hormel describes it as, quote, Spam reimagined as the classic hot dog. The company repeatedly says it delivers the, quote, savory, salty, and slightly sweet flavor of Spam Classic. Product listings and promotional materials strongly indicates that it's an actual Spam-based meat formed in a hot dog shape, not just a normal hot dog carrying the Spam brand name. So the point that I'm getting at is this real Spam hot dog shape, or, you know, a hot dog. It's not just a hot dog by the Spam company. It's actually a Spam dog. However, Hormel has not publicly released the full ingredient list, and so it's hard to be, you know, confirmed whether it's really 100% traditional Spam ingredients or whether it's a hot dog or a blended hot dog, you know, formulation or whatever. We don't know all the details of it yet. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. You know, a lot of people don't care, but when society goes through a lot of trouble, Spam kind of kicks off in World War II. You know, they had a hard time getting a lot of the foods that they needed to Hawaii. And so Spam became dominant in Hawaii, and it's been so ever since. You ever had that Spam sushi, Liz? All right, Masubi or whatever it's called. Anyway, it's basically spam and it's rice. And I mean, you go to convenience stores everywhere in Hawaii, and it's just all over the place there. If you want to try it in the United States, or I shouldn't say United States, but on the mainland or whatever, then you got to go to, like Hawaiian restaurants or whatever, and a lot of them will have masubi, and you can try it, or you can go to Hawaii and try it out. But anyway, very interesting. I'm looking forward to having a spam dog. I also like the kraut dogs where you put sauerkraut on your hot dog, and I'd like a spam kraut dog. Try that dude out, Anyway, there you have it. Just thought America wants to know about things that aren't always political, right? So there you have it, man. Get yourself a spam dog this summer. You got to go to the convenience stores in Hawaii, or maybe you can go to a ballpark and, watch a ball game and eat a spam dog, They used to call them Dodger dogs when I was a kid. You get a hot dog as a Dodger dog at the stadium. Now it's a spam dog. So there you go. We're moving up in the world, people. Very interesting. By the way, I don't know how many people know this. Spam is in a lot of restaurants. A lot of high-end restaurants have spam, and they fry spam and put it in different things, and it's one of the extra meats. It adds a lot of incredible flavor to dishes, and many people, turn their nose up at spam and go, oh, I don't want that canned meat. That stuff's weird. But people don't really realize it's in a lot of foods. Believe it or not, they put it in meatloaf, and they put it in all kinds of other things, and it adds tremendous flavor. So people oftentimes are eating spam, and they don't even know it. So there you have. Are you a spam fan, Liz? Sometimes not. I know this. My kids say, Dad, spam's gross. But if you fry it, it's not too bad. So there you go. Fried spam and fried Twinkie, everything fried's better, if you ask the folks in the South, right? Just get something fried and a sweet tea and you're good to go, I guess they say. But anyway, there you have it. All right, Supreme Court keeps male abortion pill access in place. This is a shame. And I, didn't go to this straight away on the abortion topic because the abortion topic is it's so difficult, folks. On one hand, you got to discuss it because it's so critical. Pro-life is vital in America. The pro-death and the mail order medication, the murder medication, it's just, to even discuss it to me is just, it just makes you want to cry. It makes you sick. God loves his children, each one of them. And he sends men and women or, children to the earth, male and female, and he loves them and he wants them to be raised in righteousness under God's guidance and God's commandments and leadership by loving, kind mother and father parents. And then we just, decide that they're not important. And it's such a sad, sad detail. But now the courts are literally trying to walk a fine line. They got rid of Roe versus Wade. They took a beating over it. And now the Supreme Court keeps mail order murder pills in place. The problem that I have with this whole thing is this violates state laws. How do you support as a general government, and this is where a house divided against itself surely will fall, folks. You've got states that have outlawed abortion, but then you've got the federal government, the Food and Drug Administration, in bed with these mail order doctors. You can have a phone call, have mail order murder medications shipped right to your door across state lines where it's illegal. So now you got the government against the states on this issue. And so far the court's unwilling to stop it. It's a disgrace. The courts should say you cannot ship mail order murder medication to states that have outlawed that practice. But the debate rages on. Unless the American people stand for pro-life, pro-death will be continuing. And I agree with this author that I mentioned. Great, great, great job talking about it, saying, hey, it's so woven into our culture that even Trump can't get rid of it. That's even beyond Trump's capabilities, even though he stood tall on pro-life. All right, Taiwan officials now are saying, hey, Trump met with China. And so now they're seeking direct talks with President Trump after the China summit. Taiwan officials said they would welcome, quote, direct communication between President Trump and Taiwan president following Trump's meeting with the Chinese president. What's his name? Xi Jinping, or however you say his name. Anyway, so Taiwan saying, would like to talk. And the problem with that is the Americans are walking a very fine line. Do we accept Taiwan as an independent country? Not really. Do we think it's one China? In theory. But do we support China independently? Well, we provide a big safety net and a big financial support for them to be, quote, independent. We're walking a very, very unique fine line. And if we're not very careful, Cuba's kind of been controlled that same way by China and by other communist forces, Russia and others, where it's like they don't really, well, Cuba, is it part of America? Of course not. Well, is Taiwan part of China? Well, don't want to talk about that. And that's the problem that we're facing. China might start to make a move against Taiwan. I pray they don't. But if they do, our computer chips and everything else we get from Taiwan in jeopardy. And Vivek Ramaswamy, pray he'll be the next governor of Ohio. But he basically brought up that if we're not very careful, we're driving Taiwan and others into the arms of China. And we need to be very, very careful. That does not happen. Trump thinks it's bad for Iran to get a nuke. And I agree, and it would be bad. But it would also be bad if we drove or forced China to make a move on Taiwan. And if we're not very careful, our hegemonist agenda around the world is certainly trending that way, and it looks ominous for me, especially when they keep talking about possibly putting a draft in place. And when they increase the war budget to $1.5 trillion, that number is unimaginable, folks. All right, the Senate committee advanced, quote, federal cryptocurrency regulation bill. This is scary, folks. I don't want a cryptocurrency. The Senate Banking Committee approved legislation creating a federal regulatory, quote, framework for cryptocurrencies, I guess after a big, long dispute. It's a long-running disputes between banks and crypto firms and everybody else. And so now Congress and this committee did this. It doesn't mean it's law yet. It just means it's advanced out of the committee. The Banking Committee approved the legislation. So now what happens? Does it go to a general vote? I don't know. Will there be arm twisting? And what they're doing, by the way, the Heritage Foundation and others are watching this very closely and saying, hey, be very careful, because they're promoting this as a ban on cryptocurrency, but it's not really a ban. That's a lie. So they're promoting the bill under a false premise. And this is where I think we should be able to prosecute members of Congress when they do this. You know, it's like the Patriot Act, and it steals your rights to privacy. Under the Patriot Act, it's not a Patriot Act at all. In fact, it's as opposite of a Patriot Act as you could get. Well, the same thing's true here. They're kind of trying to start to talk about this cryptocurrency, saying, oh, we're going to ban this. But it's not a ban at all. In fact, it really backdoor authorizes crypto. It's a disaster. We need to keep our eye on that ball, to say the least. All right, education scores fall across most U.S. school districts. That's why I've been telling people to homeschool forever, right? Put your kids in a homeschool, a private school. You got to do something. You got to take charge of your kids' education, not put them in the government education, I don't know what you want to call it, babysitting system. But anyway, new national testing data shows reading scores declined in 83% of U.S. school districts. Can you believe that? Reading scores, according to national data, dropped in 83% of U.S. school districts. Wow. Math scores dropped in 17% compared with a decade ago. So they just looked at the last decade and they said, what was it like a decade ago? What is it like now? And you've got reading scores dropping in 83%. You got math scores dropping in 17%. It's a disaster. All right, there you have that. We also know this Kevin Warsh was confirmed by the Senate in a 54-45 vote to replace Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve. Hamad, ongoing inflation and market volatility, so that's a disaster. Why don't we get rid of the Fed, President Trump? Federal court blocks Trump's global tariffs as illegal. The Federal Trade Court ruled that President Trump exceeded his authority by imposing a new 10% tax or global tariff under emergency powers laws. And the sad part about all that is I warned Trump, you got to get Congress involved, buddy. There's checks and balances. And if Congress would support Trump, we wouldn't even be having these losses or these battles. We'd have nothing but charted wins to point to in the midterms. Congress, Mike Johnson, get on board, brother, and get it done yesterday. All right, hopefully that's news the networks refuse to use. God save the Republic of the United States of America.